Welcome to the legendary Legends of Legends. This is gonna be, we're a bit scrambled tonight, so pulling things together is gonna be interesting. We've got a number of, until we get going, let's just start with something that will lead us into the topic, but is only marginally related to begin with.
There you go.
So, I was digging through one of my old welcome alias, one of my old decks in a pile. It was somewhat deconstructed deck because it never really got off the ground in any meaningful way, although I've experimented with a few versions a few times. And this was just a free-to-cost deck. So I had shield spheres that I could throw out to try to keep people busy for a little while. Sinister Strength. Enchanted creature gets +3/+1 and is black. More cheap pumps. Heroic Defiance. Also costs 2. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 unless it shares a color with the most common color among all permanents or a color tied for the most common. So, you want to ideally throw this on something colorless. I did get a haircut recently, that's true. Here's a Taste of Mayhem. Enchanted creature gets +2 attack, and Hellbent. Enchanted creature gets an additional +2 as long as you have no cards in hand. So this was a very cheap cards type deck, so you'd empty your hand pretty quickly. Welcome Void. Nothing like a little Skull Clamp when you're playing a bunch of cheap little free creatures to try and get some more cards if you need them. Phyrexian Walkers. Throw out again. 0 cost. It's 0/3. But this one can attack, unlike the Ball of Shield Sphere. And here we're getting into our theme. Curkeep. This was back when Time Spiral came out. Ignore the stupid price. It's not worth that, I'm sure. They're still here. The cockroaches may have finally met its, or the cockroach may have finally met its match. So this was a Cobalt deck that I was throwing together. So, getting Curkeep. The fact that it can tap for a colorless is kind of almost useless, just because everything's so cheap. But you can also pay 2 and tap it to put a Kobolds of Curkeep token creature 0/1 into play. Yeah, usually better than the alternative. Curkeep is such a gimmicky card. It is. And here's Rogar of Curkeep. This is the Cobalt legendary creature from Legends from back in the day. And boy, is it a gimmick. I should have had this ready to go, and of course it went to sleep. Just to double check the wording. But for those of you, like myself, who don't speak Italian, here's what it did in English. So for 6, you got a 5/5. All your Kobolds of Curkeep get +2/+2. And you have to pay 3 red during your upkeep or Rogan, and all your Kobolds of Curkeep become tapped and come under opponent's control. So, yeah. Steep downside, flavorful, not really good. But this is the single biggest way, at least back when it was printed, to pump all your Kobolds. So, I rather liked him. Just on the flavor. And then I threw in whatever other Kobolds I could find. Here's an Italian Kobold Overlord. This is the one that gives all your Kobolds first strike, which, you know, since they start with 0 attack power, is pretty meaningless. But it is what it is. There's the Kobold Drill Sergeant. The Overlord here was a rare. in Legends. So was Ragnar. The Drill Sergeant was uncommon, so they were easier to get a hold of. All your kobolds get an extra toughness and trample. Again, trample being pretty useless with a 0 power. Joining the army is easy, boy. Just survive your first battle. And then here's an Italian one, because I just needed more copies. Here's the Kobold Taskmaster, also an uncommon. Same cost, a red one for a 1/2. All your kobolds get +1 attack. So this was your primary way, if you didn't have Rogar out, to pump your kobolds. Unless you had Orcish Orflames or something to do it that way. The Taskmaster knows that there's no cure for the common kobold. Very fun. And it was reprinted in Time Spiral. And there's Italian. And another English. And then you had the good old kobold cards. All commons. 0 to cast, 0 ones. A wall deck, but built around Armageddon destruction for damage decks worked. It could. You still needed some sort of finishing creature in there, or other means. So yeah, here's my... Then you had the actual Kobolds of Kerkeep card. Exactly like all the other Kobold cards, except it's Kobolds of Kerkeep. So Rogar would give this one a buff, but not the Crookshank or Crimson Kobolds. And there's the Crimson Kobolds. I always found this art the most chaotic. My favorite's probably the Crookshank Kobold art. Kobolds are harmless. Bernard the Bold epitaph. They're usually harmless, but you can make them a surprise. In any case, good old Rogar there is our first legendary legend to discuss. A lot of the cards in Legends ended up getting reprinted in Chronicles and things. Dakon Blackblade was one of my favorite. That one cost 6 white, blue, and black, and had power and toughness equal to the number of lands you controlled. So late in the game, it could actually have a decent impact. This is the closest Legends got to the old sets, particularly Arabian Nights and Antiquities, which were the two before this, had cards which you could wipe out all cards from the expansion. Legends didn't really have that. Instead, they got this. This is, again, a White Border Chronicles version. But when it comes into play, tap all Legends. Legends don't untap during their controller's untap phase. And here, Legends is not talking about the set symbol. It's talking, or the cards from the set, specifically. It's talking about legendary creatures, which were introduced as a creature type in this set, and had special rules associated with them, so there could only be one in play. They have tweaked the legend rule so many times now. Now you can have, each person can have a copy. They reprinted into Legends all the legendary dragons. We'll get back to those. I just wanted to have one handy, because they're some of the more iconic cards, but they weren't the strongest. Most of the cards in Legends, the Legends that they had, were horribly overcosted for what they did. Even by the standards back then, they just were very difficult cards to use. So, a couple years ago, we got our hands on a couple of boxes of Italian Legends, and they were great fun to go through. I saved a wrapper, but unless you read, there's a little crest here from the company, I guess, that printed these. Almost looks like Trogdor on there. It's kind of funny. Anyways, but again, there's the blurb in Italian. The English cards, though, the English packs, came with a little rule supplement. I've got one here, and it just sort of continues front and back. So this was the new stuff that they included for the Legends expansion. which was the third expansion set. And it did certainly have a lasting impact on the game, although a lot of the cards in it are pretty weak. But just having something new to add to your deck was sometimes enough to get people's interest. We're going to skip the parts of this that don't really apply.
I just saw somebody's comment that came in. These are weird pokey cards.
Oh, yeah.
I probably posted on a pokey.
Banding it can be a strong ability when you have multiple creatures on the board, but it's a little bit niche. And Rampage, only comes into play if your creature is being blocked by multiple creatures. So, again, doesn't come up that much. But multicolor cards, and this continues onto the back, this was a big change to the game at the time. So, any card whose casting cost includes more than one color of mana is considered multicolored. It is all the colors in its casting costs. For example, a card with red mana and black mana in its casting cost is considered both black and red. Ooh. Thus, a spell that affects only black cards would affect it, and a spell that says it does not affect red cards would not affect it. Either Circle of Protection Black or Circle of Protection Red would prevent damage done by the card. So yeah, being multicolored, first of all, making it harder to cast, and secondly, usually ended up having more downsides than plus sides with regards to, cards that would interact with it. But that was one thing. Enchant World was another interesting thing that they added. It's sort of parallel to Legends and Legendary, which we'll get to in a second here. Enchant World cards are treated like enchantments, except that only one Enchant World may be in play at a time.
Weird.
If one Enchant World is brought into play while another is already in play, the one already in play is buried. And that's not based on card title. That's just any enchant world. So the cheap little ones like Concordant Crossroads, some people used to use just so they could get, more expensive, more impactful ones off the board. And then we've got the Legends and Legendary Lands. Legends are considered creatures, except that they are, there may be only one legend of the same name in play at a time. If a second legend of the same name is brought into play, it is buried. So whoever gets theirs out first wins. The other one can't be played. It's a dead card. That changed a few times. They changed it so that the second copy that came in could replace things, and that got abused too. And then they made it ultimately so that it was each player could have a copy of the same legend in play, which makes no sense. But yeah, they keep changing the legend rules. But this is how it was started. If more than one legend of the same name is brought into play at the same time, all of them are buried. Legendary lands are treated the same manner, except that they are considered lands instead of creatures. And then some general rule clarifications, which were causing headaches at the time, apparently. When something changes a creature's power and toughness to specific numbers, such as 0, 2, play as if the numbers appearing on the lower right-hand corner of the card were those. Other cards may legally modify these numbers. So this is probably an allusion to Sorcerer's Queen, which changed the power and toughness. But if you still had, an enchantment to buff your creature on it, that would still affect beyond the base stats. And if you control an opponent's card during the course of a game, you always return it to its owner at the end of the game, unless the card which gained you control specifically states that you become the owner of the controlled card. If the controlled card is placed into a graveyard during play, bury it in its owner's graveyard. So people were using control magic as an anti-card, apparently, which is not what it was intended for. So yeah. Speaking of bands with, these were the other lands in the set which shared that ability around. But they're not legendary, so we're going to skip those. Actually, that's a good place to start. Let's start with the lands.
Don't use it simply.
Yeah, just shift it back for now. So,
Okay.
legends.
Apparently, it's Indigenous Peoples Day and formerly known as Columbus Day.
Nice.
When did they change it? Because I remember hearing about Columbus Day.
I did not grab this out soon enough. Let's grab these two. So I've got them handy.
Peoples.
So, these cards here were the legendary lands. They were uncommons in Legends.
Okay.
Every color had one. And so it was basically, had the same tap for 1 mana of the color, just like a basic land. So this would be just like a mountain you could use it as, except you could only have one in play, at least initially. And it had an extra ability. You could tap this to remove all land walking ability from target creature until end of turn. So if your opponent had mountain walk creatures, you could use this to strip that ability off and block it as usual. This card recently got a reprint in the Tales of Middle-earth Lord of the Rings set as a special card in the holiday boosters. I think it had the one with the Hildebrand arts.
Okay.
They did a few of them like that. Not the whole set of 5, though. 'Tis distance lends enchantment to view, and robes the mountain in its azure hue. So again, classic poetry quotes. I always appreciated those. Not the most popular. This next one here is probably the weakest of the lot. What am I doing?
No, it's just Tank starting to talk about Columbus and stuff. And it's starting to inch into political talk. So.
Oh. Yeah, Eldamari, lots of other cards that can give land block. Teleria here. Nowhere near as good as Telerian Academy, which came later. You can tap for a blue, or during upkeep.
I mean, nothing.
Remove the banding or bands with other ability from target creature until end of turn. Banding got phased out. I guess.
Do you want a drink, Ray?
In about after 95 or so.
I don't know.
So yeah, it wasn't the longest lasting of abilities. I still like banding, to be honest, but yeah, you don't see it that much anymore. So this card is largely just a more flavorful island these days. Also, the restriction to do it during the upkeep makes this a little more awkward to actually make good use of. Just because removing the banding ability, if they've already formed a band, probably was going to be too confusing otherwise. Anyway.
Do you want a drink?
Yes, please. Smolder would be good. Fairest isle, all isles excelling, seat of pleasures and of loves. Pendlehaven may be the first of these that I ever got a version of, because, well, I'm not sure about that, but I know that they did a reprint of this early, back in the Anthologies box, a white-bordered version there, and then they also reprinted this as a time-shifted card in Time Spiral. In fact, it came in one of the precons, I believe. So yeah. It's a more generally useful one. Tap for a green, or target 1/1 creature gets +1/+2 until end of turn. A little specific, but green commonly runs mana elves, which are a 1/1 for 1 that you can tap for mana. So this means if you actually have to use them for fighting, they can become a little bit more of a trouble. Could deal with an opponent's white knight or something, maybe even. This is the Forest Primeval, the murmuring pines of the hemlocks stand like druids of old. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Pendelhaven. Oh man, the nostalgia. I never had. Yeah, well, I did get to play with this card a fair bit, and I did enjoy it. Like I said, it goes well with Mana Elves. And it wasn't, you know, one of the most sought after. This one here is probably the most sought after. Caracas. Oh, to make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee. One clover and a bee and reverie. So it adds a white, just like plains, but you can also tap it to return target legend to owner's hand. That's a very strong ability, especially in the commander format. And so a lot of play groups with Commander
the light adjusted.
decided they don't want people using this card. Personally, I don't think there's any problem with it. It just encourages people to have an answer, like land destruction. Yeah, this one is still relevant today, if you're allowed to use it.
That's a little bit better.
Because, like I said, some play groups will frown on you if you pull one of these out. And then that one was also reprinted in the Lord of the Rings with different art. And so was Urborg here. I think they turned this into Minas Morgul or something like that. So this one taps for black or tap to remove first strike or swamp walk ability from target creature until end of turn. So this one's nice in that it has two things that it can remove. The swamp walk is a little bit redundant with Hammerheim, which can do the same thing, but it removes any land walk. But first strike is unique to the Urborg, and that's nice. Again, black often had black knights and things, so first strike duels did come up. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. So blend the turrets, shadows there, that all seem pendulous in air. While from proud tower in town, death looks gigantically down. That's Edgar Allan Poe quote. There you go. So yeah, I like these. And again, they were all uncommon, so they weren't too hard to find, even though Legends was long gone in terms of finding packs by the time I got it. These are not legendary. They didn't have any legendary artifacts. Legendary rules initially applied only to creatures and lands in Legends. There were no legendary instants or anything else. And then here, this one I never found an English copy of. One of my friends got his hands on an English copy of this early and used to torment me with it.
Is it Jeff?
Yeah, of course it was Jeff. Anyway, this is the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. And this one in Italian. All these cards, the Italian printings, they've got a darker color palette, so the colors pop more. This is one of the few that I think that actually hurt, because the paler color palette gave it a misty look, and the mists of Pendrell Vale just sort of, it seemed fitting. What this one does, it doesn't tap for any mana. Yeah, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth as opposed to Urborg itself. They both have their uses. It's easier to come up with crazy combos with the Tomb of Yawgmoth, but that was many years down the road still at this point. The Tabernacle gives all creatures an upkeep of 1 generic mana. So the common combo that I used to be plagued with this was there was Living Plane, or there was another card that did the same thing, except made lands 2/2 creatures. And once all the lands were creatures, he would drop this. So during your upkeep, there was a rule at the time, I don't know if they've changed this too, where you couldn't use a card if it had an upkeep, if you hadn't paid the upkeep yet. So, all your lands couldn't be tapped for mana until you paid their upkeep. And so everything died. That was generally how it went. If you had a Soul Ring, you could use that, which wasn't a creature, to pay for a land, and then once you paid for that one, you could use it to pay for its neighbor, and etc. And you could keep them alive, but they still wouldn't be very useful. This card is still, I think, popular in Legacy or Vintage or something. Probably Vintage. Inlands decks, just as a way to control creatures to keep swarms from getting out of hand. But yeah, looks like Sunday's Church. Yeah, I used to include a copy of this once I got it in my sort of university deck. So I had Tolarian Academy and Library of Alexandria and this and, all these fancy building lands that I'd try to assemble. Miamo School at Water's Edge, they worked. And Death by Taxes. Yeah, kind of. It definitely is a sort of a taxing card and helps keep things under control in that way. Set that off to the side for now, and let's start off with the few English ones I have. We will get into some of the more fun. Well, the vast majority of these that I have are from the Italian, but we'll start with the few I've got in English, so I don't have to be trying to translate as much, at least to get go here. Bartel Runax, again, this is one of the few that I just managed to pick up fairly cheap or in a trade early on. Yes, you did see Gwendolyn de Courcy. That's definitely one of the more popular ones, for a number of reasons.
Not so family-friendly art.
No, not the most family-friendly in art or theme, really, when you stop to think about it. But Bartel here is good fun. 6 cost for a 6/5. Wasn't horrible at the time. I mean, Crawworm was a 6 cost 6/4 with no abilities. So you were getting a slight upgrade in that department at the time. Bartel cannot be the target of enchant creature spells, so no control magicking this guy. And attacking does not cause Bartel Runax to tap, so like Sarah, you could attack and still have him up for defense. Not a bad card. Definitely all these are going to be pretty weak by today's standards, though. But I used to have fun throwing this guy into some of my decks. Alright, let's get this one out of the way since everybody's... Let's just try and avoid some of the art for now. Gwendolyn de Courcy. 4 cost, so a little bit more efficient on the casting cost, but more heavy on the actual colors you need. 2 black, 1 red, 1 blue. Target player discards one. Tap it to make target player discard 1 card from their hand at random. And the random is the real kicker, because that makes it a little stronger. There are things that do it better nowadays, but this was still decent. Urborg became the final resting place of many swordsmen of renown, their steel overmatched by the wiles of Gwendolyn. So she's tricky. And you can see there's a dagger in behind her back or something. There she gets them to drop their guard, and then does them in. Anyway, so she's a 3/5 for 4, which is, again, pretty good stats at the time. Usually for 4 mana, you'd get a 3/3 creature. So, and the ability, quite strong. Basically something like Disrupting Scepter, except the Scepter wasn't random, and you had to pay 3 and tap it to do. This is on a creature, which makes it a bit more vulnerable. I wasn't allowed to use her anymore. Yeah, I think my brother had a commander deck with her as the commander, but she's just so weak by today's standards that his play group decided when they saw it, no, here, use this one instead. Same theme, stronger card.
You turned it over so you could see it?
Yeah, well, I showed the card, just not the art so much.
Yeah, okay.
Anyways. Zero Arian here was popular too. There are a bunch of the cards. I don't have them all, but that just cost. There were 3 color multicolors with just 1 of each in the casting cost. This one got reprinted in Chronicles. The rest of them didn't.
When did Magic start?
Or maybe this wasn't one of the main series.
When was Magic start?
The first year Magic the Gathering released started coming out in the second half of 1993.
Okay.
So this is 1994 is when Legends came out. So it was in the second year of the game's existence.
Oh, just somebody says that they have over 2,000 cards, most from the 80s, unless they mean random game cards.
Could be. But yeah, Magic the Gathering started in 1993.
That's what I thought.
This is an early set, but it's not from that first year. They were starting to introduce more new ideas here. So 1/2 flying. Flying could be useful if you really needed to stop that Shivan Dragon, or if you had an opening, you could get an attack through and beef her up for something. But the main ability of this one was paying the 3, one of each again, and tapping it. Target player draws 1 card. Usually you target yourself, but there were occasions when forcing your opponent to draw could be handy. A regular guest at the Royal Masquerade, Arian is the envy of the court. She appears in a new costume every hour. I forgot Bartel's flavor text, didn't I? Thundering down from Hammerheim. So again, tie into the land. No foe could slow Bartel's charge. Next, we've got Livonia Silone. First Strike and Legendary Landwalk. Now, remember the legendary lands? We just looked at all 6 of them. They're in the set. There was 1 for each color, plus the Tabernacle. And that's all the ones that existed. But they were popular enough cards, and they were made to be, that they figured they'd see enough use that they could give a legendary landwalk ability to one of their new legend creatures. So this one's red and green, costs 6 for a 4/4 first strike legendary landwalk. Livona's own nature is a matter of mystery. Nothing is known for sure, merely rumors of unearthly stealth and unholy alliances. A lot of these, they went back and retroactively added other creature types too, because Legend itself has had the rules attached to it, which they've changed now. Now Legendary is a super type, not a creature type, in and of itself. Here's Rasputin Dreamweaver. This is one of the interesting ones. Unfortunately, this one's got some printing errors. Those aren't scratches. That's actually the ink. Didn't adhere to the card at that point. I don't know if there was creases in the sheet or what exactly happened there, or something that affected just the printing roller or whatever. 6 to cost for a 4/1, so a bit on the smaller side, but it makes up for it in its abilities. Put 7 counters on Rasputin when it's brought into play. You may remove a counter to prevent 1 damage to Rasputin, or to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. This ability is played as an interrupt. Put 1 counter on Rasputin during your upkeep if he started the turn untapped. You may not have more than 7 of these counters on Rasputin at any time. So he comes in fully charged, and if you use some of the counters, they'll slowly come back if he was untapped at the start of your turn. Yep, you got it. The song Ra Ra Rasputin is also based around the same historical character from the fall of the Russian monarchy period as this card is, and he's got the sort of holy healer type vibes where he can prevent damage, also sort of the mystical stuff where he can provide mana, and there you go. Being 4/1 is a bit deceptive because he can prevent up to 7 damage to himself if in a pinch if he needs to, but most often I found this guy was used to just add a whole bunch of mana. usually the turn after he came into play, and cast something really big. That's most often how I saw good old Rasputin here used. Couldn't make it up in my head, or I'm not sure what that is. Anyways, so yeah, he's one of my favorites just because of the historical tie-in. And of all the historical tie-in cards they've made so far, I think he's the most recent in terms of people. So that's basically all the ones I've got for English. So we'll hop over into the Italian again. Oh, this is a little awkward. Gotta shift things sideways here now. Alright, so I've got a few pages here. I don't have them all. A lot of the legendary creatures in Legends, they put it uncommon, so it'd be easy to get. But they tended to be the less powerful ones. And then they also...
The cards come with free pasta?
Not usually. Depended who you were visiting at the time. Oh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have popped out all these sheets at once. Let's close, flip, and reopen. Alright. So yeah, they made a lot of them available at uncommon, so people would get their hands on some cool new multicolored cards that they had never had before, just as something new and cool to add to their deck, even though a lot of them, as we'll see, weren't particularly great on stats. But big creatures were still all the rage, because games tended to last longer and you had more mana available to work with. So, one of the neat things about the most of these legends, though, there are a couple of minor exceptions, is that they had the same proper names, whether they were Italian or English. And you could still see the casting costs and stats just as well. This one's got no abilities, other than just being a legend. So the only thing you really miss is the flavor text. You've still got, the original art and look, and like I said, a bit darker color palette. But if you're interested, peace must prevail, even if the wicked must die. That was Jasmine's flavor text. Excuse me. I used to know enough French that, which is a similar enough language I find to Italian, that I could struggle through and figure these out if I had to. But here's Sir Chandlar de of Ebern. Yeah. So this one is that Chandlar name came back when Magic did a video game back in the 90s, which had cards from, I think it was 4th edition, and then a couple of specific cards they included from older sets. And you could run around and try and defeat enemies to collect new cards and build your deck out. It was a fun little game. But yeah, a 4/7 for 6 isn't wonderful stats, but again, not useless. It was just a big fat creature that you could play with for fun. And in English, remember Sir Chandlar, remember and stand firm. Rallying cry of the Eberine militia. Oh yeah, big dragons and angels were definitely popular creature types. Torsten von Ursus. This guy costs 6, green-white, for a 5/5. Again, a lot of these uncommon ones were just vanilla beaters, but that was enough to make them interesting with new art. Just instead of playing another Crawworm, hey, if you've got a splash of white, why not include Torsten instead? And where am I? Torsten's flavor text. How can you accuse me of evil? Though these deeds be unsavory, no one will argue. Good shall follow from them. A lot of questionable morality there, just for the fun of it. And this guy, now here's a good example of one that's just bad. I mean, blue-white is not known for having big BD creatures, so there's that. But you're paying 6 for a 5/3. I'd rather include a Mahamati to Jin, or even a personal incarnation. There's several cards, if I'm looking for 6 in those colors, that I would pick over this guy, just a generic 5/3. Casimir. And again, the Lupo Solitero, the Lone Wolf, is the translation there. This is not in... I should have put these in alphabetical order. This would have made this so much easier. Come on. There you go. There's Casimir. Popular indeed is the tale of how Casimir was once a holy man who renounced his order in order to take up the sword. But this tale is no more likely than any other.
Oops.
Then we've got Morgana, or Montagna, actually. This one, yeah, is out of order entirely because they're not alphabetical. The intro got translated. Here she is. So, her given name has been lost in the mists of time. Legends say that her silent vigil will one day be ended by the one who, pure of heart and spirit, calls out that name again. The Lady of the Mountain. Oh yeah, Montagna, right. And then here's Gerard della Pugno Crisio. Gerard is a 6/5 for 6. So very much like Bartel the Runax, except no abilities. And just... there's his text. Once the order of the closed fist reached throughout Briam Highlands, now Jared alone remains to uphold their standard. Final Knight of a Lost Order. Marholt Elsdragon. This one was in Chronicles. My brother had a copy of him. And again, it was nice to add a little variety to the decks we had at the time. Again, a Crawworm for 6 mana would give you a 6/4. This is a 4/6, so comparable stats, a little tougher to kill. Not quite as threatening in itself. Furia 1 is Rampage 1. So, it was big enough that you might actually consider double blocking it, which might trigger the Rampage once in a while. But that was, a little bonus, but not really enough to really do it most of the time. Marhelt follows a strict philosophy, never letting emotions cloud his thoughts. No chance observer could imagine the rage in his heart. Again, strict philosophy, not letting emotions show. Short hair, pointy ears, kind of like Spock, but with a sword. There you go. Classic Mark Poole art. Torwalkie here also made it to Chronicles. A 3/3 for 2 black, a red, and 2, so 5. A little bit more for just the body, but the ability to tap it to do 2 damage to a creature was definitely a nice addition. There we go. 2 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So, if you kept your creature out of combat, it couldn't just ping off the Birds of Paradise if you weren't attacking or blocking with it, for example. Then we've got Pavel Malki. I really need a better setup for this.
Need help with something, let me know.
That would be nice.
You just gotta tell me what you need help with.
So Pavel Markey here, 5/3 for 6. I do like the style of art on this. It sort of reminds me of the old sort of medieval. Is it more medieval or more Roman? Anyway, the sort of portraits that you find from back in those old periods. I think they were more medieval. They weren't doing Roman stuff like this. Anyways, it's got a sort of fire-breathing ability, except you have to pay 2, 1 black and 1 red, to give it the extra attack. But being, again, a 5/3 for 6, pretty undercosted to begin with, for sure. And the flavor text is, we all know the legend. Pavel wanders the realms, helping those in greatest need. But is this a measure of his generosity or his obligation to atone? So, something of a penitent figure, supposedly. Lady Orca. This one was frustrating, because the good old lady here was the one legend card. Well, I guess no, because they also did Pendelhaven, which I already mentioned. But it was of all the legendary cards they could have chosen to reprint when they did the anthologies that hadn't been reprinted before and were a little harder to get. This is the one they chose to include in one of the decks. 7 cost for a 7/4 is ridiculously expensive.
Alias, do you need help with the setup? I could help if I was there, like adopted, for example.
Right. The flavor text is, I do not remember what he said to her. I remember her fiery eyes fixed upon him for an instant. I remember a flash, and the hot breath of sudden flames made me turn away. When I looked again, Angus was gone. A wayfarer on meeting Lady Orca. Then we've got Ramirez de Petrio. I remember this guy just being fun. I think largely just because of the art. He's sort of a pirate character, even though they didn't have the pirate creature type at the time, so it was just legend again. But the Foglio's arts were usually good. Phil was probably a bit more prolific than Keja, but they were both appreciated. So a blue, 2 black, and 3, 6 for a 4/3 with first strike. Usually first strike creatures weren't huge. I mean, you did have things like Yawgmoth Demon, but that had a nasty upkeep. Having to sacrifice an upkeep every turn was a lot harder when you actually had to cast the artifacts and you weren't getting tokens from something. But yeah, this guy, still 4/3 first strike, can do some damage in combat. It is still, again, the bloated sort of 5, 6, 7 mana cost type creatures, though, for mostly pretty vanilla things by today's standards. Although this guy's got some flavor. Ramirez is a most flamboyant pirate. Be careful not to believe his tall tales, especially when you ask his age. Lakusa. Where is her Try to get the translation up for this one. Why am I not finding it? There it is. Yeah, right, because this one isn't really needing a translation. Duh. Anyways, this one is a 6 cost, 5/4. And you can tap to add a blue mana to your mana pool. Now, here's the thing. Mana abilities, like I mentioned, the mana elves, how useful they are in green. Very handy on a 1/1 for 1. Even on a 2 cost creature, if you can tap it for a mana, it's still, pretty decent. But by the time you get up to something that costs 6 to get it in the first place, tapping for a mana really isn't what you want to be doing with a card that costs that much. And a 5/4 body is certainly a board presence. But again, for 6, you could usually do better. So it's neat. It's got a little bit more flavor to it than Lucrezia, Princess Lucrezia. Yeah. Certainly something I would have picked up in my early days if I had seen one that was, attainable and not too expensive for me. But yeah, just I always found there's a couple of these, and the mismatch with a mana ability on a big body just seems a little strange. I give Rasputin a pass, even though it's similar. It also costs 6, and it has a mana ability. But that one, at least, you can get up to 7 mana in one shot. So you can get basically its whole mana cost back the next turn to double your available mana for something huge. This doesn't do that. It just taps for a blue. And again, the more toughness would compensate, you could say, for, the preventing to itself. This is another one that I remember seeing a reprint of somewhere. This one's even weaker than Lady Orca, which was just above it here. Both cost 7. This one's got blue instead of red in its casting cost. This one's a 6/4. So this one is a crawworm, except it's a crawworm that needs 2 colors and 7 mana instead of 1 color with 6 mana. And this stupid thing went to sleep to check the translation of the flavor text. Even the brave have cause to tremble at the sight of Severtiri Scarzum. Who else has tamed Scarzum's dragon? So yeah, dragon tamer. Which is flavorful, nice, as a theme for a creature, but... And then for the exact same casting cost, you can get a 5/7 instead of a 6/4, so technically better stats. And instead of having no ability, it can tap to add a black. So yeah, Riven Turnbull, I would take over that one any day. And his flavor text. Political violence is a perfectly legitimate answer to the persecution handed down by dignitaries of the state. Okay, well, that's not controversial or political at all. Let's move on. Oh, boy.
Okay, when it comes to game cards, like the political things in the game cards, fine, but it's like we just don't want to get too political.
I'm just saying,
chat.
yeah.
Just because we know how it gets people. Like you start talking politics.
Yeah, I just keeping in mind modern things that have happened recently, and yeah, let's skip that one. Tobias Adrian, 4/4 for 5. That's a fairly standard size for a creature. And Where's Tobias? Administrator of the military state of Schulton, Tobias is the military right arm of the empire and the figurehead of its freedom. So he's a military leader. And that's kind of cool and flavorful. Again, it's got similar sort of classic artwork to it, which I kind of appreciate. And I think this one was reprinted somewhere. I forget if it was Chronicles. This guy looks more interesting. Hunding Jorgensen. Again, that's Rampage 1. 5/4 for 6. Not the best costed, but not the worst. Honestly, though, I'd rather have the 4/6.
That's as political as you're gonna get, Alias. I don't love politics, so we try to avoid it.
Yeah. Where's this guy's translation? This is so... I really should have put these in alphabetical order. I really should have put these... There we go. You would never guess at the terrifying sight of the man that Hunding was was as charming a companion as one could wish for. So yeah. Looks a little scary, but he's a great guy to have along in your party.
I'm sorry. Boyd's just sending me messages and it's making me giggle.
Right. This is one that's pretty iconic too, just because it's a vicious-looking cat warrior. 7 cost for a 5/5 with no abilities. It's just hugely overcosted. But nice, flavorful character if you were looking for some variety in your deck. That was about as best you could say for a lot of these. Mightiest of the cat warriors, Jedet forsook the forests of his tribe and took service with the Robaran mercenaries, rising through their ranks to lead them in the battle for Ephrava. And then we've got Barktooth Warbeard. 7 cost again for a 6/5. So at least he's got one more power over good old Jedith there, but that's about it. And he is devious and cunning in both appearance and deed. Beware the Warbeard, for this brute bites as well as he barks.
Hello, Incognito. I don't know what OKDS cards are. Somebody seems excited.
And I'll skip a few pages to get to some more. Now this page here has still got some uncommons on it, but it's also getting into some of the more some more of the ones that were rares. So you'll start to see more abilities that are more interesting from this point. Lord Magnus, a 4/3 for 6. Again, white green. And where is he? Lord Magnus. First strike, and creatures with planeswalk or forest walk may be blocked as though they did not have either ability. And since he's green and white, most likely you've got forest and plains, so that could be quite handy. So yeah, good for dealing with landwalkers if you're in that situation. And again, a 4/3 first strike could be useful in combat. So, but 6 is a lot to play still.
Oh, I missed Tank's comment. He said cute looking fella at something. What was cute looking fella? Do you remember what those were?
I'm not sure which one
I'm suspecting that it was something that was not cute.
Could be. Then here's Senastian the Falconer. And this guy is interesting. Again, 5 cost for a 4/4 is pretty average stats at the time. Now it's pretty pathetic stats, but at the time it was pretty average. And his ability is tap for 2 colorless mana. So he's got the Soul Ring ability. You can tap it for 2 colorless. This one I put sort of in the medium section. He's not as hard hitting with his ability as Rasputin, but unlike the ones that cost 7 or 6 and tap for 1 mana of your color, this one at least is giving you 2 mana, and it only costs 5. So it's almost worth playing this one if you're trying to ramp to something bigger. But still, do you really want to be tapping your 4/4 for that? I think it's I don't know. It's one that I would have tried when I was younger. I'll put it that way. Now I think I'll just find other things. Again, Christopher Rush is pretty good for art too. Senastian has roots in both sorcery and swordplay. He learned never to depend too heavily on the latter. Alright, next we're into some of the Elder Dragon Legends. And these ones, they reprinted the whole series of 5 into Chronicles. So here you've got Vesvectus Asmadi. This was the first one I ever had. I pulled this one out of a pack of Chronicles when I was a kid. And I tried to build a Dragon's Lair deck, where this was the big dragon hiding somewhere in the deck, and if I could only manage to get it out, maybe it would be threatening or something. But yeah, look at that casting cost. 8 mana. You need 2 green, 2 red, 2 black in your 8. It flies. It's a 7/7. And it's got the fire breathing ability where you can pay red to give it plus extra attack. But you can do that with green and black too. So it's got, you can pay 1 mana of any of its 3 colors to give it extra attack. This one could deal the most root damage if it actually got through to deal something. But like all of them, they thought that 7/7 flying for 8 was just too strong on its own without having some sort of drawback. So they gave it an upkeep. And they've all got an upkeep of 1 of each of their colors during your upkeep, or else it's destroyed. Yeah, well, buried, technically, you can't regenerate. Not that regeneration was inherently on any of them. But yeah, this Vectus Asmadi was the first one I got, and one I tried to use, and it's just a big flying beat stick. The upkeeps that they put on other big creatures, this was actually a little milder than some. Force of Nature, you had to pay 4 green, and it cost 6, so it would hamper your mana a lot more. This, if you had the 8 to cast it, only tying up 3 of them still left you with the ability to play a few things. So you could say that there's a plus to it. But yeah, and it wasn't like Lord of the Pit or Demonic Hordes or Force of Nature, where if you couldn't pay the upkeep, it would kill you over a couple turns. It just died. So here's one from Chronicles. There's Arcade Saboth. This is white, blue, green one. This one is neat because it had an ability that buffed your whole team, which was very unusual at the time for a creature like this. So flying, and as long as they are not attacking, untapped creatures you control get +0/+2. This was basically the ability from the enchantment Castle. And again, the same sort of upkeep. And you could pay a white to give it +1 defense until end of turn. So it could pump its defense, although only with white mana. So this one had sort of an extra ability over most of them. Most of them had flying, the upkeep, and 1 other ability. Well, I guess Victus is mana, you could say that one was 3 abilities, but they all did the exact same thing. It was just what mana you spent to do it. So, but yeah, this had the castle effect and the ability to pump its toughness. And the castle effect could help your whole team. So it wasn't bad. Certainly not the worst one in my books. The one I don't have handy was the Palladium Moors, and that one was just a flying 7/7 with trample. And that was the white, red, green one. Then there's Nicole Bowl. This is the most famous of the five. The one they turned into a big, nasty planeswalker later on. And this one certainly was the scariest. Not in terms of raw damage, but the ability it's got is pretty nasty. So it's the blue, red, black. And this one, if it gets through and actually damages your opponent, it can make them discard their hand. So here's there's the Palladium Wars, the one I didn't have handy. And there's Nicole Bolas. If an opponent damaged by an opponent damaged by Nicole Bolas must discard entire hand. Ignore this effect if opponent has no cards left in their hand. So, there were ways where you could give a creature a ping ability later, so you could use it to tim them to their face to do that if you couldn't get through with attacking. But usually, if you got your big 7/7 flying, you wanted to attack with it anyway. And so that's how mostly people got it through, was just being a big flyer. There was a combo that came out for this card years later, which I think involved like some crazy setup in your, like if you got your perfect opening hand, you could play a Lotus Petal, play a Dark Ritual. No, it wasn't Lotus Petal. It was Lion's Eye Diamond, even better, right? And a Dark Ritual in your land, and play Yawgmoth's Will, which then lets you recur the cards you just discarded from the Lion's Eye Diamond, and then sneak attack and bring in Bolas with haste and attack them for 7 damage and discard their hand. And yeah, there was some tricks people used to do to try to trick this in with haste or something and get that effect. But yeah, 8 is just too big a casting cost even when it was printed. So we just lost light or something here. I don't sure what's.
I don't know.
It went to sleep. Okay. Anyway, so there was Nicole Bolas, and then Chromium here, which looks really nice, just a metallic robotic dragon. Unfortunately, Chromium is probably the most disappointing. Just because the ability Rampage 2. Rampage sounds cool, but it rarely pays off. The only thing you could really say good about the Rampage 2 in this particular case was because it was already on such a big flying body, there wasn't much that could block this for flyers effectively. This could take out a Mahamadi to Jin. A Shivan might be able to trade with it if you had enough red up, but usually you would have to double block it. And the most common flyers of impactful size were 4/4s, like Air Elemental, Singir Vampire, Sarah Angel. So if you blocked this with 2 4/4s, that would ordinarily be enough to take it out and trade for 1, except that Rampage 2 would bring it up to a 9/9 with the second blocker. So you'd really need to have 3 4/4 flyers to be able to block this and take it down effectively, which was...
You're talking about some game called Rampage. In movie.
Yeah, it's been used as a fun in other things, but in terms of Magic the Gathering as an ability, it was a fairly disappointing ability. Like I say, this creature you could almost argue in the meta of the time, except the fact that you're still paying 8 and an upkeep for your 7/7 flyer. So there's that.
Poor people that are coming in briefly and just seeing these Italian cards. They're like, what the heck is...
Yeah. Then we've got Boris Devilboon. A 2/2 for 5. So here you're obviously paying for his ability. And Okay.
Can you give me the iPad and tell me when you want it?
Well, anytime I'm trying to check an ability or flavor text on any of these
We'll
cards.
just say, hey, pull it up, please.
So,
I'm not a mind reader.
anyway.
Okay, which one do you want?
They're alphabetical.
okay.
Boris Devilboon.
Boris, you said?
Boris. In the multicolors. There he is.
Okay.
Or you could just read it or whatever. Anyway.
I guess I could.
So Boris's ability, pay 4 and tap him. Put a minor demon token into play. Treat this token as a 1/1 red and black creature. So basically he was sort of like the Hive or Serpent Generator, where you could just use him to turn out more and more creatures on the board. There weren't a lot of token generators at this time, so this was a little cheaper than the Hive, but being a creature was more difficult to work with. Jacques Levert. This was one that I kind of enjoyed. All green creatures get +2 toughness, and it's a 3/2 for 4. But being a green creature itself, that ability will make it a 3/4 for 4, which isn't horrible stats. And like I said, buffs the rest of your team if they're green. And here we are back to where's Jay? Flavor text. Come on. Can't even see what I'm. Where's Jacques? Jacques. There's Jacques. Abandoning his sword to off center because I'm looking at the wrong thing. Abandoning his sword to return to the lush forest of Pendelhaven, Jacques Levert devoted his life to protecting the creatures of his homeland. So the ability, again, with a buff, mainly the toughness, tying into Pendelhaven again, of the legendary lands. They did incorporate the elements that they put into the flavor of the set pretty well overall. This is one which I picked up just recently because, it brought back to mind the days when Jeff, again, would torment me with it. He had an English copy. And a 3/3 for 3 is good stats at the time. Better than average. And the ability then is just gravy, but not entirely unuseful to be sure. So this is Tetsu Umzawa. Now, if you've been playing Magic for a while, you're probably familiar with the equipment card, Umzawa's Jeet. Equipment didn't come out until Mirrodin when they changed the card frame officially. Back in all the original frame sets, right through Onslaught and everything, equipment hadn't been invented yet. But back when they got to Kamigawa block, there's a different Umzawa, I'm forgetting what his first name is, who became a big player in the story of the set. So this, I'm guessing, is one of his ancestors. And the ability, you got to pay a red, 2 black and blue, and tap it to destroy target's tapped creature or target blocking creature. And also he has that he may not be the target of an enchant creature spell. So your opponent can't control magic him again. Or put a pacifism on him either, for that matter. But what a pity they have done to him in recent blocks. Oh, they did a different version of him, did they? I don't know. But still, this original one's the one that comes to mind for me. And it's a 3/3 for 3, which is a decent beat stick, and the abilities are not irrelevant either. Probably one of the better legends in Legends. And again, a lot of them had this sort of 3 cost, 1 triple. They tended to be pretty good. The Zir Arian was another. I don't have them all, but this is probably one of the more famous ones, the Angus Mackenzie. White, blue, and green for 2/2. And you can pay a white, a blue, and a green and tap it to basically do the fog effect. So, yeah, Angus Mackenzie having a fog on a stick. This was pretty much a dream. Just confirm the wording here. Creatures attack and block is normal, but none deal any damage during combat. All attacking creatures are still tapped. Use this ability anytime before attack damage is dealt. Battle no longer served a purpose in Caracas. So yeah, pretty strong. You could do something similar once they released Isochron Scepter, just by throwing a fog on that. But yeah, this guy could be really annoying if you didn't have a way to get rid of him. Just because combat damage was no longer a win condition. In the newer Kamigawa sets, they have sci-fied the world. Well, that's a shame. Angus the beef. Yeah, well, Angus is a type of beef, so there you go.
Isn't Angus beef like an Alberta thing, or
I'm not sure.
They have that in the States too.
Next, we've got Axelrod Gunnarsson. This one I think was also in Chronicles. 5/5 for 8. Again, the whole bloated casting costs. 8 costs as much as an Elder Dragon, and you're not even getting a 7/7. You're getting a 5/5. He's got Trample, and each time a creature is placed in the graveyard during a turn in which Axelrod damaged it, you gain 1 life, and Axelrod does 1 damage to target player. So, if it kills things, you get a life, and your opponent loses 1. It's not a bad little bonus, but it's just lackluster. I guess it is big enough that the trample is relevant, but the 8 casting cost really kills poor Axelrod here for playability. Ramses Overdark. This guy's interesting. 6 mana for a 4/3 is meh.
It's kind of hard to see the art on that card. Maybe bring him a little closer. I don't know.
This one?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe need better lighting. It's okay. It's better on my iPad now.
I just scrolled right past it. Ramses Overdark. The ability is tap it to destroy target creature which has an enchantment card played on it. So, if your opponent's using enchantments to buff their creatures, it's a good way to deal with that. Or if you've got an enchantment which you can throw on. Well,
it depends which Giratina you mean.
I do like some of the. Richard Kane Ferguson comes up with some pretty solid stuff at times, so appreciate that. If you had something like a Rancor that you could play and off the creature and bring it back, and off the creature and bring it back, that could be actually used. Here's Bartel in Italian. I've already done the English version. Nebuchadnezzar. This guy was also printed in Chronicles, and this is another one that is based off of a historical character. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and I think in the book of Daniel he appears a few times. He was a henotheist, but we won't get too much into that. But he's a 5-cost 3/3, and where are we? His ability is pay X and tap him, name a card. Opponent reveals X cards from his or her hand at random, or entire hand if they don't have enough cards. Opponent then discards any of those cards that match the one you named. You may only use this power during your turn. So, you can't wait for them to draw a card and then do this during their before they get a chance to play it. But you're guessing to see what they've got which after you do it once, you'll get a better chance for next time you do it, and you can force them to discard some stuff. I remember this guy seeing a bit of play back in the early days for me and my play group. Another Richard Kane Ferguson art. And again, being a powerful figure from history certainly helps the flavor of this card for me. Good old Nebuchadnezzar. This one I just kind of like the art of. There's a few of these that have this sort of two colors, like two of each of two colors for a 2/2. Aisha Tanaka. This one has banding in itself, so if you like banding creatures, this is still probably a little overcosted, but most banding creatures were. So you get a 2/2 banding, and you can tap it to an artifact effect which requires an activation cost is countered unless its controller spends a white. So if your opponent's trying to use an icy manipulator to lock something down, or use a time walk to get themselves another time vault to give themselves another turn, or any a millstone effect, whatever, any artifact you got to pay and tap to do something, you can tap her in response to make them pay a white, or the effect is canceled. This is interesting because it's one of the early cards anyway that could deal with countering abilities. And like I said, I just think the art is pretty neat for this one. Kei Takahashi, this one was also in Chronicles. A 4 cost for a 2/2, and you can tap it to prevent up to 2 damage to a creature. So, just a sort of a fancier Samite healer, except that could prevent damage to you. This is just to creatures. Here's another one of these 2 red, 2 green, so 2 of each of 2 colors for 2/2. This one flies, and just to double check that, I think it's attacking or blocking creature can get +2/+2. Yeah, flying target creature gains +2/+2 until end of turn. So it's not attacking or blocking creature. It's just any creature. You pay 2 mana and tap it to give +2/+2. Or you got yourself a 2/2 flyer for your 4. An explorer of the Aether, Tunkir often discovered himself in the most unusual physical realms. And I drifted down. Anyway, I guess it's hard to read anyway for most of us. If there is somebody here who reads Italian fluently, congratulations, you win the stream. There's the Rasputin Dreamweaver again.
You need an Italian friend that speaks both English and Italian.
And Stang was again in Chronicles. Stang is an interesting one. 3/4 for 6, except he makes a Stang token. So he's a legend, but he's a twin legend. So let's just see how they word that here on the original. When Stang is brought into play, also put a Stang twin token into play. Stang twin token is a 3/4 red-green legend. If Stang leaves play, remove the Stang twin token from the game. If Stang twin leaves play, bury Stang.
Tank says, I can read Italian. I don't know what it means, but I can read it.
Right. So this one you got 2 3/4s for your 6 mana. I remember people experimenting with this guy, but again, having the drawback where if either dies, you lose both is a little harsh. And then here we are back to the Italian versions of the legendary lands again. So sort of come full circle in terms of the legendary stuff. I don't know. Maybe one day I'd like to do a giveaway of some of the, if people can stand Italian.
Daniel,
these are pretty nice.
I don't know what he wrote, but I'm assuming it's something in Italian. And I'm not going to try and read it just in case.
Komoti Chami? I don't know.
I don't know what it means.
I'm not sure exactly. It's a question of some form, apparently.
I don't know.
In any case, I'll just thumb through the rest of the ones which I don't have an English or Italian copy of, because there's some really interesting
Alias,
Italian
I can
legends
taste
too.
Italian, and I know it tends to mean yummy.
Adun Oakenshield here is
Italian
again
food is very good, yes.
a 3-color, one of each, for a 1/2, and you can pay one of each. Select one creature from your graveyard and place it into your hand. So this guy is good for getting some of your creatures back. And at his passing, the bodies of the world's great warriors shall rise from their graves and follow him to battle. I always wanted to find a copy of this guy, but I never saw one in person anywhere. What else haven't we covered? We covered most of these.
Oh, he asked what your name was. Okay.
Okay, I'm Barry.
And I'm Angela.
We go by Papa and Mama Spocat on here because we've sometimes got the whole family.
Yeah.
This is the deck on Black White I told you about. I had a Chronicles version. The stars below are equal to the number of lands you control for its power and toughness for 6 costs, so often it would be a 6/6 when you got it out and just got bigger from there. My powers are as vast as the plains, my strength is that of the mountains. Each wave that crashes upon the shores thunders like blood in my veins. It's interesting that it mentions mountains, and there's no mountains in this casting cost, but he's still a flavorful guy. Gabriel Angelfire was also in Chronicles. And this one is interesting because of the choice mechanic. During your upkeep, Gabriel gains one of the following abilities until your next upkeep: Flying, First Strike, Trample, or Rampage 3. This was one of the higher Rampage numbers you could get, too. So, up until Tiki's Dragon came out in Mirage, where they brought back some Rampage action. But Gosta Dirk, 7 cost 4/4, with First Strike, and creatures with Island Walk may be blocked as though they did not have this ability. Honestly, I prefer Lord Magnus. Just a little bit cheaper and deals with both colors that he costs.
This was a fun set to open when we opened it.
It sure was.
And then doing the research on
we only got about half the rares with 2 boxes. Like, it's a big stinking set.
Yeah.
Half Dane costs white, blue, black, and 1. Half Dane comes into play. He is a 3/3. During your upkeep, Half Dane acquires the current power and toughness of target creature other than Half Dane. If there are no leaguer targets, Half Dane becomes 3/3. Hail from Teleria, the ever-changing Dane. Then we've got Hazon Tamar, 7 cost, 2/4. On your next upkeep after Hazon is put into play, put star token Sand Warriors into play, where star is the number of lands under your control. Treat these tokens as 1/1 white, green, and red creatures. If Hazon leaves play, all Sand Warriors are also removed from the game. So he makes you an instant army of little 1/1s, more or less, which is kind of cool. Well, not instant, because it's on upkeep after he comes into play. So he shows up, and then the army shows up the next turn. But there we go. Then these, I think, oh, how did I miss Johan? Well, I guess the one I had was from Chronicles again. But 6 cost for a 5/4, and Johan does not attack. If Johan does not attack and is not tapped, any of your creatures may attack without tapping, which is kind of neat. But he's a big enough body that usually you wanted to attack with him, so it didn't come up much. But it is neat that he could make something else gain the vigilance ability, basically. We already did the Lone Wolf. Here's one we missed. Lady Caleria. 2 green, 2 white, and 3, so 7 for a 3/6. Tap it. Lady Caleria does 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Tapping for 3 damage is nice. But on a 7 mana creature, I kind of give the best implementation I can think of this sort of ability is where they did Kamal Pitfighter back in Odyssey. And that cost only red. It was a 6 cost for a 6/1 haste that could tap to do 3 damage to any target, so including players. And that could just come down and do it with the haste right away and wasn't as restricted or attack, so it was nice. This one's a little more awkward.
Alias's second last comment.
Caleria?
No, his second last comment.
I didn't know there was a picture of me behind Lady Caleria. Caleria, yeah. Well, you know. Then there's Lady Evangelia.
Oh my goodness.
So white, blue, black, 3 cost for a 1/2, and you can pay white and black and tap it. Target creature. Yeah. Target creature does no damage during combat this turn. So this is a more
it was a rough morning.
more limited Angus Mackenzie ability, except that if it's just one creature, you could still use that to best in combat. It could be useful, for sure. When Milady was young, the sight of a rainbow would fill her soul with peace. As she grew, she learned to share her rapture with others. And we already did these ones. Then we're into... Yeah, we did those ones. Oh, here's one we missed. Ragnar. Again, 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue for a 2/2. And you can pay the 3 and tap him to regenerate target creature. Being able to regenerate anything is pretty nice, to be honest. Regenerate is a pretty strong ability. I'm afraid it's sort of fallen out of popularity recently, though. On the field of honor, a soldier need have no fear. We did those. Covered most of the... Well, Rubinia Soul Singer. 5 cost for a 2/3. Tap it to gain control of target creature. And it does not untap... Rubinia does not tap or untap this creature. If Rubinia becomes untapped, you lose control of the creature. You may choose not to untap as normal during your untap phase. And you also lose control of the creature if either Rubinia leaves play or you lose control of Rubinia. So yeah, there's been a few
chest on him. You might need to censor that.
Sort of sea singer questions. Ragnar
has a chest on him. You might need to censor that.
It's not too bad. Then we've got, we already covered the, Solkanar. Again, Mike Solkanar, I had one from Chronicles, so. But this guy did see quite a bit of play. At the time, a 5 cost 5/5 was good stats. And having Swamp Walk, solid ability. And Solkanar's controller gains 1 life each time a black spell is cast, and you're playing black. So he can gain you some life. He's unblockable if your opponent has swamps, and he's just a 5/5 body for 5. This one definitely saw play. I remember I used to use it, Jeff used to use it. Basically, anyone who had one, if you were playing those 3 colors, that was the big restriction, is you needed red, blue, and black. But most of the time, this one definitely saw some play. Sisterhood, we've covered these, covered the... Oh, no, not this guy. Drago. 7, 2 blue, 2 black, and 3 for a 4/4 first strike. Creatures with Swamp Walk may be blocked as if they didn't have the ability. Again, Solkanar seems like a friendly fellow. Well, yes. He's certainly friendly for you. He's not so friendly for your opponent anyway.
Looks like somebody that would want to be on my team, not the other side.
Yeah. Urdrago just is a more expensive version of Lord Magnus again, as far as I'm concerned. If I'm going to run a creature like this, they are interesting, but there's a lot of sort of repeated ideas here. And then, yep, that's all those. This one almost looks like it was from Arabian Nights. Al-Baraz Carpet, but no, that's a legend card. Yeah. Anyway. So that's all the legendary creatures and lands from Legends that we've gone over and touched on now. Whether it was reprinted versions
will make his day.
or Italian versions, they had a lot of fun experimenting with these cards in this set. And a lot of these ideas did carry over. They came up with some unique ones that are still interesting to play with today, even if they're not technically super strong. But yeah, I always enjoy looking at these and figuring which ones to use. And it just reminds me of days when the game was so much simpler. Nowadays,
are you done with the cards? You gonna?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done with the cards.
Put it on yourself now.
I could.
Show off your magnificent beard again.
Yeah, right. Anyway. Oop. I'm too short.
You can lift this up if you want to.
Yeah, but we had fun. Like I said, just maybe if there's enough interest, I can go through and do some more of the Legends. And we did pick up a lot of fun cards with the Italian stuff. And, I had never had an Angus Mackenzie. He is pretty strong. I've experimented with him in decks. I've never gotten too heavily in it. But there's certainly some good ones around.
Oh my, look at that beard.
Well,
do you want to show this off?
Enjoy. There you go. I was commenting on my shirt, but anyways.
I know, but still.
What are we showing off?
Just to what I get to open when you're working Night's Nest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm on day shift, so I got to keep this one short, unfortunately. But so that when I'm working nights and I can't do a magic stream at all, Angela likes the cute animals in Bloomborough. So for one of the next week, obviously I'm not working at all, so hopefully we can do something a little bit more sustained. But for when I'm not around at all, we did pick up a Bloomborough bundle. So Angela can have fun going through that and looking at all the cute animal arts.
It was cheaper than Walmart.
That was a weird seat adjustment.
Close up on the beard.
Close up on the nose. Mm-hmm. Anyway, thanks for joining me and another one of my episodes where I can recall and reflect on some of my favorite cards from the past. Being Italian, it makes it a little bit more awkward to go through these things, but I did collect a few English over the years, and I figured one of the main highlights of the set Legends was the fact that they introduced legendary creatures, multicolors. Both were new at the time, and they were tied together, basically. Every legendary creature in Legends is multicolor, and every multicolor creature is legendary. They just... those two things were locked together early on. And now, obviously, they're not. But it seems like any new set that I look at now has got multicolors in it and has got tons of legends in it. Like, I think they've gone overboard. Yeah. And they've made the rules too user-friendly, if I want to put it that way. I think there should still be a bit of a drawback so that you can make the cards a little stronger. But you're running the risk that if your opponent's using it too, you might have a dead card. I like the flavor of that. Yeah. So, I don't know what else to say. with regards to that, but I should be getting to bed soon because
Yes.
I do have to work tomorrow. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks for coming out and enjoying this little romp with me through the days of 1994 and
Close this.
honestly 95, 96 when I was using these from Chronicle. So you got to be careful with how you close.
I know,
this
that's
binder.
why I was just get this out of the way. You push the camera back for a minute. Hello, Deepson. How are you? We're just finishing up actually, but feel free to go rewatch this when we're done.
Yeah, I had fun talking about the legendary creatures of legends and well, and lands, because there were legendary lands.
It's still a fun set to go through.
Yeah,
even if it is in Italian or mostly in Italian.
There was a lot of fun and interesting cards. A lot of the cards in Legends are, even at the time, they were a little bit junky. You know, not every card could be a hit, but there was definitely a good number of strong cards in the set. They did neat and unique things sometimes, so it was a fun one.
We had pasta cards today. Oh, that's what the joke about the pasta. Okay, I get it now. Because it's Italian, and Italians are known for their pasta.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Anyway, this is also, again, Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The day itself, so.
And it's, well, it's not Canadian Thanksgiving anymore in Ontario.
No, I guess not. But
Eastern time zone.
We're not in that time zone.
Nope.
But, so it's just the tail end of it. So again, any Canadians who happen to tune in, happy Thanksgiving, belated or otherwise. And to all you Americans out there, you still have some looking forward to do. Because it's going to be another month and a half, I think. So,
yeah,
still, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving once you do get there.
Is it like November 26th or something like that? I don't know why I'm thinking that.
I think it's like...
When's your Thanksgiving?
This year, I think it comes right at the end of November for them, basically.
But is it always the same? Or no,
I think it's always like the 4th, whatever, of November.
I could be Canadian if I was adopted, just saying. Yeah, no, I know it's November. I'm just wondering what day it is.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, we should probably end this now. Yep. There's I don't even know if it's not even worth trying to raid. Wouldn't even know who to raid. 28th. See, I was close. Yeah. I was close. I kind of get an idea.
Makes sense, because it's like that's the farthest out a 4th thing could be.
The day isn't. Yeah, day's November. That much I know.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. I hope you have a good night. It's been fun.
Yep. Thanks for coming out.
And we'll see you Thursday. I guess is the next stream day. I don't know when I'm opening it, so we'll see. So
still thumbing over what I'm going to do. Again, working days. I got to keep it brief on Saturday if we're doing something, different. Maybe I'll tackle the Overpower. Haven't done that yet. And we've got a couple of starter deck type things that could open up. That could be fun.
There's so much stuff you could do.
Oh, there is.
Maybe even teach how to play old style.
Old style what?
Classic style. Magic the Gathering.
Konnichiwa. Thanks for coming.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye for now. Appreciate you all, and hopefully we will catch you soon. Yes, thank you, everybody, for being here. Even if you're just lurking, we do appreciate you. So have a good night. Have a good morning, a good day, whatever it is, wherever you are. And we will hopefully see you soon.
Hopefully.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.